John, I just think that's fantastic. Isn't that a fucking great film? Isn't it a great film? And 84 minutes.
Don't put words in their mouths.
Sam Fuller or what? Get in, get out. I was so happy to have this shown because it needs to be seen, doesn't it, in front of an audience, you know?
On a large screen.
Yeah. And before we get into the details, without sort of overdoing your point of view, you've done a lot of these, I know you have, and I want to make sure it feels different for us a little bit, but I just think that it's so great to think that the whole film, as far as I can see, was hindered on that shot of the priest in the field. Is that right? Is that the signature shot for you that got the whole idea going?
How do you know that? Did you read that somewhere?
I'm psychic.
There was an image of a couple of cowboys in a cornfield that was either in a book or in a magazine or something. I can't quite remember, but it did start the whole train of thought about maybe making a Western, and then from that a lot of other ideas were attached to that. And I think it was something to do with the fact that there was agriculture and cowboys, and I never really saw those together before.
Because it's got such a beautiful colours to that shot. It's like a painting shot. You might have seen, it's a Spanish paint, I don't know, you might know, you're an artist as much as a painter. But I thought that was the shot. I thought, yeah, I can imagine if you have that image in your head, you're going to find out what the film is. And it's great to meet a British director, Scottish director, who makes a Western. It's great to watch that genre because everyone says the Western's dead. Are you a Western fan?
I am to an extent. I'm not like obsessive, and I'm sure, but you know, my dad took me to see Westerns when I was a kid, but this was the late 70s, and it was probably the worst kind of Westerns. And then maybe in Edinburgh I worked in a cinema called the Cameo Cinema, and we did late night double bills, and I saw Once Upon a Time in the West for the first time on a big screen, and that was a huge impact. And then, but you know, I love noir cinema, and I love thriller, and I love other genre. I do love genre cinema, but I think the Western, especially in 2011 when I started to write it, it seemed like a sort of unfashionable genre, so that appealed to me as well.
And I would say before we carry on that we're not wearing coordinated shirts on purpose.
No.
I've never met John before. Your shirt is from where? Where's it from?
I got this in America about 15 years ago.
So were you touring with the Beta Band when
yes,
you bought it? Okay.
Yeah, we all bought one.
There we go.
We went to this. And just tonight, I wish I'd thought of it more often in other Q&As, but tonight I just saw it and thought,
Well, I had a different shirt on. I was leaving the house. I said to my wife, she's from Canada as well, I said,
okay.
I'm going to get the Canadian shirt out tonight.
Yeah.
So here we go. I'm glad we matched,
Great.
but we haven't coordinated. I think, from my point of view, watching a movie like that, it seems that you were really blessed with having Michael from the beginning. Now, let's get a sense for everyone here is that if you're filmmakers or you're not, if he wants to be in your movie, was that an easy conversation to have? Because I guess you would have filmed this 2013, is that right?
Yes, end of 2013. Yeah.
And you worked with him, 7 or 8 years ago, was that right?
I met him around 2008, 2009. So we basically, I'd made a lot of beat crazy videos with the Beta Band that were my film school. I tried to make them narrative short films. I hate even calling them music videos because I wanted to tell little stories with them, and they were my kind of film school. So, but they were maybe on YouTube, and Michael's agent Connor showed Michael these films, and Michael liked them, and then I was introduced a few weeks later, and Michael said, if you fancy doing something. So he was shooting with Tarantino at the time, I think, Inglourious Bastards, and I said yes, and I got one day with him, so I made a film on my mobile phone, and that started the kind of collaboration going. And
You strike me as a person that doesn't plan too much, is that right? You tend to have a little bit of a vision, but I wonder when you met him, did you think, great, I'm going to make a feature film with him? Was that ever in your mind? Because you've done that now, which is great. Did you ever think that?
Well, I was thinking a little bit cynically about the next project I could get him for. So I was thinking, you know, I'm going to make this one day, not just get the best out of him and my film or whatever. I thought, let's make this collaborative and let's make him really enjoy it, so he wants to work with me again. So I knew he liked motorcycles, so I made it based on a motorcycle. I knew he was working with massive crews and hanging around a lot, so I made it mobile phone and guerrilla and shot in Soho, no permission, just back of his bike, shot, but jumped on the bike, went to the next location. So, you know, and it worked because he did enjoy it, and he did say, do you want to do something else? And I got 3 days with them, and again, I just made sure the food was good, the script was good, and and then the film was good, and then he said, okay, this is,
Great.
let's, because, let's make a feature. So yeah, it sounds like a plan, but it wasn't really. It was just because I know some short filmmakers make films that are snippets of features, but I'm very much one film at a time and make that the best. I wanted to really try and make the best short film I could, both times.
I think a lot of people here tonight are beta band fans. I can imagine there's a few people here for that. There's a few here. And I was looking back over your work this week, and I just thought of all the stuff that you did with them. And as a friend of mine said tonight, it's great as a film school, as you call it, but they hold up so well visually. And Trouble, I thought, was the seeds of this film in a way. It's like you're doing Crouching Tiger in Scotland.
Yeah, basically, yeah. I mean, when I made Trouble, it's kind of like a samurai. It was inspired by Shogun Assassin film. So, I tried to make a blood-spurting Scottish samurai film, but you're absolutely right.
It holds up so well. I watched it this afternoon. I'll look at that again because I think that shows great confidence to say, I'm going to do a Western. And that's what we love to watch here anyway, you can imagine. So when Michael was obviously, he was on board, not to get into the process because it becomes very, I think, political for people to hear that story, but did it come together fairly quickly? And I know the stories about Michael wasn't available in the winter and you wanted Colorado. What's the issue? Was that a bit of luck that you got to film where you got to film?
The script took nearly 2 years to write, and that was felt like a long 2 years. But I knew once the script was finished, then the funding bit would be quicker because having Michael can get funding. But everyone was relying on the script being right and good. So that was really the test. And then I think I managed to finish the script in maybe May of 2013, and then said to Michael's American agent, when can we have him? And they said, well, November, December that year, or in 3 years' time, sort of thing. So, and that was winter in Colorado, November, December. So then I started thinking about and talking about New Zealand as a place to shoot because it's summer and there's 13 hours of light a day as opposed to 5. And at first it felt like a compromise until I went to New Zealand and saw specific locations that really I'd written about in the script, like when the buffalo was jammed in that rock and the plains felt right, and it felt like a specific area of southern Colorado that I knew quite well.
And did you hope that no one would know it was New Zealand?
Yeah, exactly. I hoped that no one would ever know, and then I got the titles back.
It says New Zealand Film Commission.
Exactly. New Zealand Film Council presents. Yeah.
I was thinking tonight when you were here, you might stand up in front of the screen and make a shape and cover it over.
Yeah.
Because it's that thing looking at the locations. John Ford landscapes are very well known. They're kind of like Big Bend, and you've gone for the kind of Anthony Mann, True Grit type Colorado, the birch trees, and that's beautiful because it's very lyrical. And when you were writing the scripts, I gather was it Katie Lee's on board, who's a very good development
she's fantastic.
counsellor.
Yeah,
she really.
Yeah, she's incredible. Yeah.
And you changed the script because initially Michael was the main character, and then didn't you you flipped it around in some way? Was that an early change, or was
that's just the process of script writing? Yeah. So it was very organic. So in the beginning, I knew Michael was going to be my star, So obviously I started writing him as the main character. And then that character slowly started becoming younger and younger in the writing. He went from 35 to 25 to 20 to 16. And I started thinking, I need to go around to Michael's and say, you're too old.
And was that a scary conversation? Were you thinking on the way he might say, well, actually, it's over? Or was it
no, because Michael's very... his ego doesn't really get in the way of like a good script, I don't think, so that's the way I found working with him. But I turned up and said, Michael, I think maybe, and he had read the draft as well, and I said, I think maybe you're too old for it, and he said, yeah, I think you're right. I'll play the older mentor, and then we'll get a 16-year-old in. And I think it took a bit of pressure off Michael because first time director, and I think if he was the out and out, it was just all about him, then there was more pressure for that film on his shoulders. But I think for him to become the sort of co-lead, really, or it really is about the both of them. But definitely to have that other younger character, I think he was very happy with taking that back role.
Well, it certainly pays off in the third act when he's with Rose, that you get the reinvestment in him, whereas if it's him the whole way, you get
that was
advantage.
a great thing about the screenwriting, because I started writing it with the character of Jay, and then the character of Silas was so strong and so kind of he just always kept coming back, and it was really a way of telling Silas's story through Jay rather than just telling a story of a boy that goes and dies. It really has to be something else.
That's a good pitch, isn't it? Here's a story of a boy that goes and dies.
Yeah. And then you're like, okay.
Should we take a question? Do you want to ask a question, sir? You got a question? Who's got a question there? Some hands up. Okay. Anyone got answered? Any questions?
Every question.
Oh, answered. Nice and loud.
I've read a lot of critics talk about this film since it's come out a couple of months ago, and they all use the term anti-Western.
Yeah.
Which puts you in the category with loads of great films, McCabe and Mrs. Miller, Heaven's Gate, etc. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about being categorised? Did you look upon this as being anti-Western?
Not when I was writing it, and it was funny because when I watched, I'd seen a lot of Westerns, but I re-watched a lot of Westerns, partly to sort of know what to avoid, really. But it really occurred to me that revisionist Westerns or anti-Westerns, they didn't suddenly become that. Everyone was that, and it felt like Shane was anti-Western compared to things like the early John Ford ones, like Iron Horse, and then it felt like High Noon was anti-Western compared to Shane, and then My Darling Clementine and Red River, and then when Peckinpah came along, they were all anti-Western because they were all different from the Shane stuff, and then so it just felt like there was never really. It was always reinventing itself, and there was never really a line of anti and non-anti-Westerns. So, is that a word? Non-anti-Western?
It is now. It is now. We categorise
a category on iTunes.
It's still kind of good though to be put in that category. It was like people are watching that film, critics and cineasts from not just England, like France and Europe and America, who are categorising this film, your first film, with all these amazing films. That would be a big compliment.
Yeah, of course. McCabe and Mrs. Miller is maybe my favourite, so yeah, of course. But I think it just, hopefully it means not cliched, because I think that's when there's either anti-Westerns or there's cliched Westerns, and that's people that are just revisiting the past and making something retro and something kind of a bit spaghetti Western-y, but I think you really have to try and do something different with the genre, for sure.
I get a sense from you, John, and we'd never met before, is that you do enjoy what you do, and I think watching that, I could feel you loved filming it. Was it an enjoyable shoot? It looks like it was not fun, but
it was
had
fun. It
was
fun. Incredible fun.
So did that surprise you? I guess you're pretty prepared by that point when you go to start filming, was it?
Yeah, I started doubting. I'd always enjoyed the set, and then I started doubting it because so many people say, "Oh, it's your first film. It's going to be a nightmare. It's going to be stressful, blah blah," But then when I got there and I settled in pretty quickly, and it did. No, it's what you live for. It was so much fun to make. Even watching it tonight, watching the last half hour, it's just reminiscing and thinking, God, I wish I was back there shooting that.
What I think was also nice watching from my point of view, is that there's humour in that. I don't remember many John Ford Western where you see a bum and you see salt in a wound, and that's amazing because the Coen Brothers' whole thing is tone management, isn't it? And I think personally he's done great tone management now. Is that I'd read reviews, as you may have done as well, a little bit. Oh, it goes a bit crazy. For me, it all felt like a great album. It was a really good collection of scenes that perfectly, and I think it's great to see a Western with humour in it, where I didn't feel like he's gone too far. That's just my opinion. Was there anybody else that had a response to the film they want to share as a question with John as we carry on filming?
Well, I'm not sure it's really a question, but actually, you're talking about 70s Westerns, it most put me in mind of The Outlaw Josie Wales, which has, a long time ago that I saw it, but it still has that kind of feel that like it's very much a Western, but there is this kind of comedy in it and slightly undermining the classic. It's like, like the Native American who's good at sneaking up on people, and he isn't. You know, and it felt like it had a bit of that, like it subverts your normal expectations. And,
Yeah.
And
Sure.
I just wondered as well, if being in New Zealand, which is where he was again to give the game away, and you're with these great actors, and you're with quite a relatively, I imagine, like a Kiwi crew, to pardon the expression,
Yeah.
with maybe you've got Robbie Ryan, who's got good chops, as we know. So
Yeah.
did you feel like you were able to do what you wanted to do a lot more by being away from, or wasn't that really a consideration? You just got on with it. But looking back, you were allowed to go away and do it, weren't you, really?
Yeah, no, and we replay. We really, Michael comes with a lot of kind of, people always want to know where he is and what he's doing, you know, and we deliberately kept this whole project quiet and didn't announce it on IMDb and didn't, you know, and then kept it really kind of under the radar, which was great. And then when we were there, it felt like we were in the middle of a tiny little town in the South Island, tiny hamlet, and you know, it just felt like we'd sneaked off to make this, and that kind of took the pressure off me.
Well, it feels like a bit like a band going to record a good album up in the, like Led Zeppelin in the hills, whenever it was. But you went away and did it, and then you told people, was that the feeling you wanted to go for?
Afterwards, it's sort of, there was a few press articles just after the edit where people started saying, how did we not hear about, you know, a Michael Fassbender Western shot in New Zealand? But so that was nice, yeah.
And also in the casting, I mean, people here, if you know Ben Mendelsohn, there's a great feeling of, it's him.
Yeah.
And I gather an interesting story about the time you had with him, because there was was there a moment of doubt that you had enough time with him? Because Ben is a great busy actor. To give us a little bit of background on that story about it wasn't as long as you thought you were going to have. Is that the case? Was it?
Well, he's the main baddie in the film, and it was supposed to be maybe a week or two I had with him, and then Ridley Scott wanted him for Exodus and offered him more money than probably my entire budget. I don't know, but so Ben said, you know, I still want to do this, but I can only have 3 days. I can have 3 days. So it was either get another actor and have 2 weeks, or make it work with 3 days with Ben, and kind of sneakily made it work, you know, with the tricks of movie magic, but not CGI, just not that much movie magic, but you know, just making the most, and he can make the most of an hour, Ben. You know, he can make an hour feel, you know, a couple of minutes screen time feel like a lot longer. So it was only frustrating because I as a person I liked him so much, I wanted him around more. But.
And I think as well helped that he had that brilliant coat.
The coat, yeah, which he has in his.
He's kept it now, is that right?
It's on a showroom dummy in his bedroom in his house in LA.
And was that ever a clincher? It was like, look, we've got you a good coat as well, or was he already on board? Because I can imagine as an actor, that is such. I mean, it is very McCabe, Mrs. Miller, as we know. But it's a great look for
the coat was in the script, so I'd kind of. I think I had 2 references for the coat. Was Iron Horse by John Ford. There's a big coat, and McCabe and Mrs. Miller. There's a big coat. So I said to him there's going to be a big coat, but you know. And the art department, I mean, the costume was, because we didn't have money really to make this, you know, even though everything was very, very tight. Even though we had money, it was inexpensive. I got a lot of money for our first film maker, but it's still very tight. So, but the costume, Kirsty just got $20 worth of sheepskin rugs and sewed that coat together.
Because also looking through your videos for the Beta Band, there seems to be a very good visual economy, like the assessment video on the beach.
Yeah. That
you're used to sort of making use of screen time.
Yeah.
That you maximise. And I thought watching that film, it seemed like you'd really not panicked about, I've only got this amount of time. So Ben Mendelsohn's 3-day story is a good story, but it shows to me as a great accomplishment to say, don't worry, I'll make that work. Whereas other people go, no, it's got to be 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And
I mean, when I talk to film
you know?
students, I give away a lot more about what we didn't have, but I wouldn't like to spoil it by saying we didn't have, you know, forests or wheat fields or whatever, but there was a lot of things I learned making those short films with no money, that when we were on set and we didn't have something, and people started going, we don't have it, and I said, well, let's just have a little shoot up from this angle and we'll be fine, you know. So
because I think a lot of great British talent, where we know in music and film, have come from the art school background, and I wonder whether that's to do with not panicking but enjoying the conceptual side of it without being too detailed as an interviewer. But that just showed to me that visually you could turn the sound down and still follow it.
Yeah, I think that comes from, yeah, and then again from the previous point, but if you look at Kurosawa, Japanese samurai films, that I'm a big fan of Japanese cinema, but really there's just forests and a couple of guys dressed as, and that means you can spend a lot more money on things like weather and light and you're not really, and then when you look at kind of CGI Hollywood films, it's really, they just show everything. And that kind of spoils it. Whereas when you look at people like Bresson or these Japanese films, you're just showing little jigsaw puzzle pieces of things, and it's a lot to do with practicalities because they don't have everything, but it really plays on the mind of the viewer, and you're using imagination a lot more.
Well,
more powerful.
Someone said as a good director, don't control the world, just control the story.
Yeah, and it's all about story. Yeah,
for
sure.
And I think with the story, I get a sense, and I'll ask a question out here in a minute. Sorry to carry on, but you talked about the script came from sort of Mark Twain, Ambrose Bierce, and the kind of the Jackrabbit. Did you have to look for those expressions? Because there some great lines in there as you're working with Katie and when you're working with Michael. Mm. The language felt very accurate for the American literature. Was there a lot of work done in that direction with these sort of great American writers?
I think that was just more getting an idea of the world at the time rather than looking back at the world through mythic writings and stuff. I mean, I watched The Coward, Jesse James. And
the long title.
Yeah, and I found the language very
stilty,
contrived, yieldy, and I wanted to avoid that with this, so I tried to just keep it as timeless as possible. So it's not of the time, but it's not. It's just kind of, you did that, he picked up that, he said that. I just tried to keep it like that rather than, be all yieldy Western.
Yeah. So. Have you got any questions from the floor? Sorry, go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, I was wondering about the Congolese trio. And, you talking about the Japanese films. When I was watching that, it really reminded me of Beat Takeshi's films, and he often puts little skits in like that. And I wondered if that was your inspiration and it went in at the script stage, or if it was just something that you saw and thought, I'm going to have that in the film.
Yeah, I mean, first I was lucky enough to go to the Congo, go to Kinshasa a few years ago and fell in love with Congolese music. But then I was reading a lot about the war, the American Civil War, and black regiments fighting against the South, and then after the war just sort of been left without anything, which happens, has happened in France recently. There's that happens a lot where the Gershas and all, where people fight for other countries and then just left. So, I mean, I do have a backstory for every character, and that even though you'll never know it, but the backstory was that they had fought and then got injured and then just left at the side of the road and just had their music. But also a good way to put in maybe the theme of love and death and put the difference between Jay and Silas. Silas rides past and Jay's a bit more poetic with them. But no, it was about just all these different starting thinking about all these different cultures in America, the African, German, just the lack of a lot of Americans, at the time as well, and everyone being kind of migrant and travelling, and
especially with the main characters being Scottish
and Irish, and there's Scandinavian, and so when I travelled America when I was younger, people would say, my grandfather was Scottish, great grandfather was Scandinavian, and then you watch the westerns and everyone's American, and that was the other whole seed of the film, was to reassess that sort of landscape.
And also, I discovered a while ago that I think all the people who were in like Baton Rouge were originally from Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
A lot of the black American Canadians went down for the Trail of Tears. Yeah. So I thought that was like bumping into them en route in a way, because they were all travelling south. All the French speakers who ended up being kicked out the worry.
And predominantly German cowboys. Yeah. And when you talk about cowboys, you really talk about Germans.
Yeah.
So.
Because the film visually has that kind of Candide sort of Voltaire carried through the world vision, which often can be grating in some films, but it holds together so beautifully well these episodes which
Yeah,
is why
well-
I think visually it's so stunning to have that. Was that always in mind, the kind of the journey through the landscape notion?
Yeah, I mean, it was always in mind that Jay was Candide, you know,
Yeah.
was the optimist. So
Always the best
even
of things, yeah.
even more specifically, yeah, I was thinking about Candide with Jay, yeah.
Because also I think as well, what's great about the film for us to watch it is very short, but we feel like we've been on a journey. I gather in the filming you did a bit of a paper moon trick where you weren't on the journey, you were around a location. Is that right? Because you maximised a lot of spaces to show. I mean, was it a big area you travelled, or were you based in one place and you went out?
Well, that's the beauty of New Zealand. I mean, I think I watched a film called Bad Company.
With Jeff Bridges, yeah.
Yeah, and it felt like it was an amazing film and brilliant, but they did feel like the whole thing was shot in one field, even though they're travelling a lot.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to avoid that. And the beauty of New Zealand is that, you know, if you point the camera this way, it looks like desert, and then this way it looks like Japan, and behind you looks like Switzerland, and it's just such a varied landscape in quite a contained environment.
And I think you had a beautiful lead performance from and a great accent. Well, I can imagine from where you're from, that was a bit of a challenge, wasn't it, to make sure the accent was right, because
Yeah,
he's
but
Australian.
people still get it wrong. Even I watched the trailer for a film with Jude Law, and I think the director's Scottish, and his accent's awful. I don't know how that happened, but because it's one of the. I mean, yeah, you just eventually the only compromise is if you're shooting the scene and the way he says it is so great, but the accent wobbles. Then you have to choose, you know. But you know, really, you want the accent to be. I mean, he was great. I would say the girl, Karen, was absolutely. I couldn't believe her accent, how good her accent was. She's, you know, South African, then New Zealand.
Brilliant.
So, but she sounds like she's from a specific north of Scotland. So.
Any questions? Sorry.
It's quite a short film. It seems quite specific. I was just wondering, did you shoot a lot more than was in it, or were you just kind of?
Yeah, I mean, I storyboarded every shot. So, and it was the way I'd always worked with, you know, my mates and my movie. It was just a storyboard. So yeah, the whole thing was storyboarded every shot, and you know, especially the action scenes, they're pretty much. I shot the storyboard, and that's about it. So, in the edit, it was almost I'd almost sort of gone too. I hadn't shot enough, almost. You know, I mean, I'd shot enough because I got the film I wanted to make, but it was very close. You know.
Would you do it differently?
I would maybe go off the storyboards a bit more, but you know, that was my first film experience, and the storyboards felt like. Something that was like a safety net, so I was kind of constantly relying on them. But I think in the future it'd be nice to have go off the storyboards a bit, because you know, magic happens on set, and it did with this, and we did go off the storyboards. But yeah, I didn't shoot a lot of the scenes. I didn't shoot much more than you see. So.
And I guess you've got 13-hour days. Were you shooting a lot of day for night as well?
Yeah. But that was a decision I made with Robbie, that Robbie suggested it, and then sent me some day for night stuff, and it was just, you know, such a great decision. And the actors love it because they're shooting in the day and not in the night, and you can really, it's underused, I think, day for night. I noticed Mad Max actually. The new Mad Max used it a bit, but it's really underused because it's beautiful.
Yeah. And I think with Robbie, obviously, he's got a very keen visual eye, and you have a visual eye. Was there any, not conflict, but how did you deal with the fact I see it like this, or was that never an issue?
No, I mean, I gave him 3 or 4 rules, which was everything has to be in focus, deep focus, and use a split diopter if we can't achieve that, but just make everything deep focus, everything static, and only move the camera when we have to, and then the rest of it just took care of itself. You know, I was worried about not framing because you get obsessed, but his framing's amazing, and so I hardly ever had to change the framing. And you know, he's fast and very, very talented, and a master of light, which I know nothing. The 2 things I know nothing about, that's lighting and what kind of lenses and how to use a camera and stuff. I don't know anything about
So
it.
you had,
So it worked really well.
and the split dioptic shot would be the one when they first see Fassbinder on the left and he shoots at him. Is that an example?
Yeah, there's about
Yeah.
10, but yeah, that's one of them where you can almost see a line down the middle.
Yeah, sort of quite behind the Palmer, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the aspect ratio, what was it? Because Westerns can be very surgeon, which is very 1:1:185. What is this one? Is that?
166.
And how does that feel for? Because it looks good, but it's not too big. But it's not too. It's
Yeah,
kind of
I mean-
a nice scale, isn't it?
Yeah, it's more like the early European cinema, so it's
Yeah.
more like a lot of films that I love from Europe in the pre-spaghetti western era, and the widescreen thing. I just didn't want to go near the spaghetti western, so I just thought let's, and it's New Zealand and not America, so let's not shoot too much landscape, and
Any other questions? So over there, go ahead.
Yeah. What was it like working with Kate on the story? Was that at sort of script stage? Was it pre-script stage?
I think I'd written like a terrible half draft of something, rambling mess, and I didn't really know anything about structure and really how to tell a story over 90 minutes and on script. So I met a few writers and they wanted to just take it away and write it themselves, and that didn't work. So when I met Kate, I didn't even know there was such a thing as a script editor, but met her and she started talking about the process, and let's tell the whole story on one bit of paper, which took about 3 or 4 months to get it that sort of, and then expand it back up, and and to have fun and games with it, take the characters, put them in a room, blah blah, just do a lot of. But I rate her so highly. It was such an amazing experience working with her, actually.
And a question over there.
Yes, the way Michael played the role reminded me a bit of Burt Lancaster.
Yeah.
Was there some of that going on?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you should say that, because when I watch, hardly anyone's mentioned that, but when I watch old Burt Lancaster films, I think of Michael, like Brute Force, the prison one, and the swimmer,
Swimmer, yeah.
The swimmer. It's really similar in the teeth.
When you had the cigar.
Yeah, I always think of that, and I've never really mentioned it to Michael, because you don't really want to say you remind me of another actor, but I definitely think there's something there. I mean, I don't think Michael would even know that, but it's funny when I watch old Burt Lancaster, I think of Michael for sure. Yeah.
Good question. Any more questions? Yeah. Go ahead. So Jeremy.
How was the edit process with the BFI and Film 4 and the New Zealand Film Commission?
Just the question was that how was the edit
Yeah.
with so many potential cooks involved?
Yeah, I mean, there was some problems, and they were kind of because I had always edited my own stuff, and I'd never worked with an editor before, and that was another thing I had to learn. And I had one editor, and we took the film as far as we could go, and it felt like we weren't connecting on some of the rhythms of the film. So even though he's a great editor, we just weren't really finding it. And then I edited it myself for maybe a couple of months, and again started getting into trouble there because it's a mammoth process, and then got another editor that was very old school and very really great at, we connected with the rhythm really well, and it became a really great process. So in the end we found it, and so it was mainly between me and editors rather than me and funding and all that, and they just Film 4 were brilliant. Tessa Ross was still at Film 4, so she was really supportive and just wanted, she'd keep trying to just extend edit until the film was found. But as well, what I said earlier about not shooting a lot, it wasn't as if there was different films. I think it was more frustrating for people because every time I'd show it, after a month, the film would look kind of slightly similar. What have you been doing? But there was so much, we tried, and you fine cut, because it was all really subtle. For this, if we cut too fast, the film didn't feel like the characters had travelled that far, and then if we cut too long with the distance, it got boring, because you're like, okay, we're just two guys riding on horses for days on end. So it was a very subtle edit to get right. It was very tough.
I think well the hints in the title, isn't it? Slow West.
Yeah.
It's like that's the meal you're cooking, isn't it?
Yeah.
And was the title always there?
No, it was called Railroad in the Moon for a while, and
I like that.
Yeah, it was because the railroad was supposed to be like Silas going like that, and the moon was supposed to be Jay looking up, but it was too poetic, you know, and I needed more of a blank title that wasn't either. It was, you know, it did justice to the action picture as well as the poetic.
Well, it sounds like a Lewis D'Amour novel you might see in a second-hand bookshop.
Yeah.
And also the poster, the colours of it look like a 1950s picture cover. So there's clearly aesthetically, the music is fantastic. It reminded me a lot of the Alexander Payne music from Nebraska. Was it?
I've not seen that, but yeah.
Was it your kind of? Was it like a Wong Kar-wai sort of influence? As a friend of mine asked, was that?
Yeah.
And how did that come together? You mentioned, was that your Japanese thing?
There's actually a musician called Moondog. I don't know if you're familiar with Moondog, but he's brilliant. But he's 50s, 60s. He always gets put in the jazz section in record shops, but he's more interesting than that, and it's sort of he mixes classical European music with Native American percussive type music. He's been sampled quite a lot and stuff, but you know, I always had Moondog attached to this when I was editing, and but then in the end, anything that I put on from a record collection just felt 50s or 60s or 70s or felt like a record, and I realised I needed a score, you know, and I had a lot, so I gave the composer a few songs. There was some of, I don't know the composer, but the filmmaker, you said.
Alexander Payne, Wong Kar-wai.
Wong Kar-wai, yeah.
In the Mood for Love.
Yeah, In the Mood for Love was on there, and Moondog was on there, and and lots of other stuff. But yeah, I think that was definitely, I needed something European, because even though that's Japanese, I always felt like waltzy European to me, so it was kind of European 3/4 time style.
From your success creatively with the Beta Band, did you find when you were making that a lot of what you'd learnt then was applicable now? Musically maybe as well?
Maybe the rhythm in the edit and the ability to sort of work with people and collaborate, and but you know, when I was in the Beta Band, I was a frustrated filmmaker, so I was kind of always, you know, wanting to make the music videos, and as far as the music goes, I was sampling, and sampling is like DJing and collage and montage, and you know, and film. Every filmmaker plucks little bits from here and there, so it did feel like there was something about kind of soaking in a huge variety of influences, and making this film not just influenced by westerns, but influenced by, you know, Bresson and Popeye and
Oni Baba and those.
Yeah.
Now?
Pardon?
What are you working on now?
I'm just writing again, so writing my next film.
So when you were in the stage of putting the film together, you get a Sundance. Did that happen quite quickly? Had there been a screening? Was it a very fast process? Because it's very near to when you finished it, you made it. Was it quite a momentum when it's been cut together for you?
Well, I finished it in November, and then Sundance watched a rough cut, which I kind of hated the idea of them watching it without the music and without the sound. So, but they were one of the few people that kind of, I think, really do have the vision of watching rough cuts and knowing what, you know. So it was lucky that they chose it, and because we were really thinking, let's go for Sundance.
And that's January, isn't it? So it was January this year.
Yeah, so it was January this year. Yeah, and no, it was just really, yeah, it was just really amazing to even be there and have a western, and Sundance is named after a western.
Royal Redford,
you know. So yeah, the whole thing was kind of so scary. I wish I could do it again because I didn't enjoy it. I was petrified.
But it was helped. Didn't you meet a cowboy that really loved it?
I met a cowboy that loved it, yeah.
And how did that feel? You thought he was going to come and take you out? Did he say straight away?
No, it's just this. No, he was just like, I'm a big fan of westerns, and you know, and that was a western, you know, so that was good enough, you know. And then subsequently I showed it in LA, and this woman that had made 7 films with Sam Peckinpah, including Pat Garrett, she came to the screening, and afterwards she said, Sam would have loved that. So, but, you can't complain.
We're going to wrap it up in a minute, so couple more questions before we finish? Anybody else got any more questions? Anything else? Well, I just want to say thank you very much for coming this evening. We've really enjoyed talking to you, hearing your answers, and we enjoyed the movie. And please come again.
Thanks.
John McClane.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you.
And a quick round of applause for Marcus Shepherd for hosting another great Q&A. Thank you, Marcus. The bar is open until midnight, folks, so don't feel you have to go. We won't kick you out. Just relax and enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you.